Khalid Malik's Morning Jam, the encounter on the Morning Jam. Joining us, special guest this morning, she is the executive director at Aahung. She holds a BA in biology from Amherst College and MEd in human development and psychology from Harvard University and a certification in human integrative counseling from CPPD UK. She is the executive director at Aahung. Joining us, Ms. Sheena Hadi. Good morning, welcome to the show.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
So I thought we'd hear from you with respect to Aahung, and for those who may not have heard of it or know of it, what is its primary function and what happens at Aahung?
So Aahung is a local nonprofit, and the vision and mission of Aahung is essentially to improve the sexual and reproductive health and rights of individuals across Pakistan. And we do that through running education programs and health-based programs. So we look at the services that exist and basically look at where they're not doing enough or where the quality is not good enough, and looking at the reproductive health statistics in this country. There's obviously a number of gaps. So we try to fill those in by training, by getting the right resources to people, by getting information out actually, because there's a huge dearth of information, especially amongst young people in this country. So a lot of education programs on these areas.
So how did it come to be?
So interestingly, Aahung actually just started as a very small project in Karachi. In 1994, and at that point in time there was a big escalation in HIV and AIDS in India. So the focus came on neighboring Pakistan, that we're going to start seeing these numbers go up in Pakistan as well.
Right.
A lot of donor interest in that. So it was a very small grant that said, okay, go into 4 areas of Karachi and see what the scenario is, and start spreading some information about prevention. And when the small team of 5 or 6 people at that point did that, they realized that you can't be talking about something like prevention of HIV/AIDS in an environment where nobody knows anything about their body, right? So you're going in and talking about these kind of technical aspects, and we need to go way back and start talking about very simple things, very simple, even just biological matters related to reproduction. And so from there, the mission broadened, and in 1995, Aahung got registered as an NGO, with a larger mandate, essentially of reproductive health and rights.
When you say reproductive health and rights, for a layperson, how do you sort of explain that? Because it's not just sex ed.
No. Sex ed is one part of it, and even sex ed is really misunderstood as, we're going to be talking about sexual behavior. Sex ed is everything. It's knowing what happens to you during puberty. It's about your health and hygiene. It's about body protection, knowing how to identify violence, being able to communicate, being able to ask for help when you need to. And all of that is foundational to what we look at as reproductive health and rights. So when we say that someone should be able to decide what their family looks like, that's a part of your reproductive rights. When someone can say that I am free to live free of violence, that's your right. So being able to identify those things and then being able to act on them. So if you, we have, for example, a huge problem of anemia in this country. So
Right.
This is a nutritional interrelationship with reproductive rights and health. And then that anemia results in unnecessary maternal deaths. So, so a lot of these things are very interconnected, very interrelated. It's not just about babies. It's not just about how many you have. It's about living your life with dignity. It's about being able to control your body, and it's about being able to make the decisions that you see best. And reproduction is one of them.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. You talked about some of the gaps. What are some of these gaps?
Well, we have so many gaps. Firstly, we don't, we've really stigmatized talking about a lot of these issues. So we're still uncomfortable talking about them. And so that means that we're not getting information out at the right time. So, children and young people are going through these formative development years without learning simple things, even about their developing body. We don't want to talk about these issues that we think are icky during puberty. We think everything needs to be kind of covered and everything is shameful, and that actually leaves young people really vulnerable, because they don't know where to go to, and they get a lot of incorrect information from peers or now from the internet, and end up exposing themselves to more harm. We have a lot of these clinic centers around Karachi where they'll be given really essentially the equivalent of drugs, right? Because they're scared and they don't know where else to go. Even things like bullying and peer pressure, which we're talking about more now, thankfully, is really a lot of a product of young people not knowing where to go for help and who to talk to, because they think they're going to be in trouble or they think they're doing something wrong. And so that's all sort of part and parcel of the things that we talk about in a lot of our programs.
You mentioned right time. What is the right time?
So for me, I would say the right time is really as day one. I mean, we encourage these conversations to start when children are as young as 3 and 4 years old, in really non-threatening ways.
But the conversation in terms of what is good touch, bad touch, that kind of conversation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's safe and what's not safe? What makes you feel okay and not okay? How do you tell somebody that I don't like what you're doing, or I don't like the way you're handling me? Even little simple things like we work with parents and we say, don't force kids to hug people and kiss people and sit on their laps if they don't want to. And there's respectful ways that children can deal with adults if we teach them how to do that without forcing them. Because what we're essentially, we're also a very ageist society. So it's what the elders are saying is always right. And that's not necessarily the case. No. What you're training a child to do is basically be vulnerable to grooming, right? Because you're saying the elder is always right. Now, the elder is actually doing something wrong. We haven't instilled the skills for that child to think, wait a second, I know what feels wrong in my body, and I have the right to say no. So that's really important, and that starts as young as you can think. Without it being scary. It doesn't need to be scary.
No. I think it's scary for the mums and dads, because they don't know how do I even approach this. We've even done these little videos, because that was one of the things that we kept getting was, how do I do this is so overwhelming. So we made these little videos where we showed a parent and child playing football, sitting in the car, on a motorbike, whatever. I mean, just these everyday scenarios, and how do you use them to just keep the conversation going? Because it's not a one-time conversation. It's again and again bringing back those messages that this is, what is okay, not okay. This is when you come and talk to me. This is how you say no. This is how you get help. When this happens, right? Case studies. Why do we do, fire drills in schools? Because when you're in the moment, you panic unless you're almost on autopilot and you know what to do, right? So if this happens, who are you going to go to? Who are you going to talk to? Where are you going to go? So we've got to go through that again and again with kids, because it's a power dynamic. Kids are small. They get scared. They're intimidated. We're going to head to a break. Be back straight after. We've got Ms. Sheena Hadi joining us, Executive Director, Aahung. If you have any questions, you can either WhatsApp us 0315 111 9191 or call through 021 3452 1596. It's The Encounter. Sheena Hadi joining us, Executive Director, Aahung. I'm curious, how do you... It sounds like you've got... When the days are tough on the mind, they're tough on the mind. How do you switch off? How do you process and come back home to the family? How do you do that?
I've been asked that question a lot, actually. This is tough work. But I think for me, what I've always looked at is the cases of positive outcome, right? So we're constant. I think this is something that's happening a lot now. We're constantly surrounded by bad news. It's not just with regards to women and reproductive health. It's all around us. So I think for me, what keeps me going is just to think about, this week I heard there was a school and we were running our programs there, and there was a girl in that school, and she asked for help from a teacher because her parents wanted to pull her out, and the teacher went to the house.
Pull her out of the program or the school?
So, pull her out of school.
That's okay.
Yeah, and using what she had learned from the program, talked to a teacher, said, help me. So asking for help firstly, recognizing she wanted to stay in school, that she could negotiate with her family, and was allowed to continue, whereas maybe she would have been pushed into marriage or whatever it is, because we know every year of education is so valuable. As soon as you can get girls to get through metric, it's automatic organic benefits for them, for their families, so something like that. And then I hold on to that, which is that, okay, this is what we've got to keep doing. We've got to keep looking at those individual cases, and each of us has a responsibility to do as much as we can, and we can only do so much.
But how do you just switch off at home? And I ask this because maybe those that are listening can benefit, who are constantly have this sort of mind that are still at work, even though they're at home.
Yeah, I try. Kids are a good way to forcibly switch off. they push you to switch off. So my kids do that, but it's hard. It's hard. I don't think I can separate myself entirely from work. I think it sits with me. Especially when you hear about cases, or when we do field visits, and we see, the floods, after the floods in the summer, it was very hard on a day-to-day basis just to keep going and not think about what was happening in the field. When we would go out into the field and see things, or even if my team was in the field and sending pictures, those sit with you. These are real people. These are real experiences.
Do you have like I don't know, like it's almost like I'm looking for the potion from Sheena. Is there like a morning routine that you have, or like a before bed routine?
No. There's really not. I think all the some mindless activities, maybe Netflix. No, not really. I work out. That helps me release some of the pent up frustration, energy. No, not really. I think I've also been in the field and sector for a while, so I think I nothing really shocks me, I think, anymore, as much as it did in the beginning.
I understand that. I've come. So I have had the privilege of talking with a lot of the youth, and I've noticed that a lot of the youth, when I say the youth, those that are about to sort of enter into university, and primarily girls who want to do psychology. And when you ask them, well, why do you want to do psychology? They don't know why. Maybe they feel it's easy to get into, and I always tell them, well, हमें ना therapist की बहुत ज़रूरत है, हमें और therapist चाहिए, तो maybe you should do a course in that instead, or counseling and so on. What would you advise to anyone right now who is contemplating psychology at university? What is a possible career path, and what do you feel like, because you spoke about these gaps, what is it that we can do as youth, as youngsters who are getting into university, contemplating university, in terms of career paths?
So, if there's somebody who's gotten to the point where they can go to university, I think that's already such a massive privilege in this country. And if you can make choices about your career path, because a lot of people go to university being told this is what you need to do or be. I think if it's something of interest, go for it. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're going to do or what you have to do. Like I said with me, I thought at one point I was going to be a doctor, and then I realized, no, actually what brought me here was I volunteered at a women's clinic in the US, and it was a free clinic. And, women were, again, coming there for all sorts of reproductive health issues in a poor neighborhood close to where my college was. And it just drew me in. I just somehow, that's where I was happy going, talking to these women, working there, and I remember thinking, I was maybe 20 at the time, I remember thinking, we need this in Pakistan. I don't know why. I had not really had that exposure, but it was that gut that we need places like this in Pakistan for women. And as soon as I moved back, that's what I gravitated towards. And so I think that's the thing, right? If you have your educational degree, take that and move to what motivates you, to what makes you wake up in the morning and not hate going to work. I mean, that's the biggest privilege in the world, that I don't think in the last 20 years I've ever woken up and thought, I don't like what I do. I don't like work. And I think that's a gift. So you can be a psychologist and do so many other things. You can absolutely do mainstream psychology and counseling, but there's so many other things that you can do with that, because actually what is psychology? It's just understanding the mind, it's understanding behavior, and you can apply that to anything in the world, right?
So would you I always tend to dissuade and say, don't do the degree. I'm one of those. But instead go and do like a certification, and go and do something that you can use straight away and just improve, and just sort of do more sort of training. Is that your kind of thing, or no? Just go ahead and do your.
No, I mean, I think for certain things you just need the degree. If that's how we're still working with that, right? We need the degree, but there's so much now in the world that you can do that you don't actually need that formal degree for. There's so much entrepreneurial work. There's so many areas that you can contribute to. So I mean, the certification, again, if you can and you have that privilege, do what motivates you, what makes you feel passionate, right? You're going to be most effective in that position. And if you can do that without having to go through the whole degree, great. I think the degree does provide, again, if you have the privilege to be able to get that degree, I think the degree does provide a backup. There's something about having a degree. I mean, I've looked at thousands of resumes, right, hiring people in the last many years, and there is something about saying that I have been trained to be able to do something, which does stand out on paper. I mean, let's be honest about it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're good at it, but you have been trained to do it. So I think the degree is a safety net in some ways. But again, as long as it's a degree that means something to you. I know lots of people who've gone and gotten, MBAs and things like that, and then don't want anything to do with that world. So that's just misery waiting to happen,
That's so true. We're just going to go to a break. We're back with more. Sheena Hadi joining us this morning, Executive Director, Aahung. I just want to pick your brain a little further. But on the days where you think this is just too hard, this is just, you know what, I don't want. What keeps you going?
I don't.
That sigh is about.
I don't know how to not do this anymore. I think that's honestly, it's not even something that I question anymore. And I think for me, I have the ability to do it. I have the ability to make a difference, or to try to make a difference. And so I have to. I mean, I don't really question that anymore. That's
a lot of pressure. I have to make a difference.
Yeah, I suppose, but I don't really see it as pressure. I see it as, what's going to keep me ticking as well. It's not just all altruistic, right? It's also about what makes me happy, like what makes my soul feel fulfilled. And, I think for me, this line of work does. I think making a difference in the lives of people, especially if it's women and girls, and looking at the conditions in this country, there's so much that needs to happen. And I don't know how to not do it. So I don't even ask that question anymore.
But just again, I just want to ask. So, as parents who have young girls, how can we begin to, I don't know, open this communicative sort of channel? What can we do, or what should we be doing?
So, girls and boys, right? I mean, we do. I know. I often think about this. I often think, I'm talking to my daughter all the time, and am I forgetting to talk to my son? Because I know he's already sort of naturally in this position where he'll have certain things that come easier. But I think it's as important to talk to boys. But again, I think starting young, making them recognize that any question is an okay question. You're not going to say, where did you hear that and what happened and why did you may turn around and say, look, I don't know if we can talk about that right now, or I'll come back to you, or I don't know, but the questions are okay. And preempting things, we know certain things are going to start happening in kids' lives. I know in a way we all want them to stay young and naive and small and all of those things, but they start to grow up, and they're growing up faster and faster now because they're exposed to all of these things through technology and the internet, and they're gonna get that information from somewhere, and if you are not accessible, they'll find somebody else to give them that information. And so it's just talking about things. I mean, just yesterday my daughter came up to me and she said, I know that kids secretly vape in the bathroom, And first I was like, well, how do you know what vaping is? Like, what is vaping? So that's kind of where we started the conversation. And then I said, okay, what do you know about it? So do you think it's something that, that is good, bad, healthy? Like, you're telling me as though you're coming and tattling almost, right? Like, did you know this? So there's obviously something already there. There's already these conversations have happened, right? Somebody has come and told her and said, oh my God, this is so they're already having these conversations. So why sort of turn around at that point and shut down the communication by saying that's a really bad thing and don't ever do that, and that's kind of the end of the conversation? That's not going to get our relationship anywhere, and that's not going to help her, because in the next couple of years she will be in the position where someone will say, hey, why don't you come and try this in the and then what happens? That's what we've got to preempt. So why not talk about it now? I
was just telling Sheena just a little earlier on, we were off air, but my 9-year-old came up to me. She didn't come, we were just sitting watching something on TV, I think. And she said, Baba, what does F mean? And I can't, so she didn't say F, she actually said the entire word, but I can't say because I'm on air. And I think back, and there was one of two things I could have done. Either I could have, said, don't say that ever again. But, I mean, instead we didn't have a discussion about it in front of the other two boys that were there, that were sitting anyway. And so they were hearing in on what was being said. And yeah, I mean, as again, no training manual, but it's just, I don't know what you want to call it, but is it just knowing that, listen, these conversations are going to be had. Would you rather these conversations happen with you or someone else that, I don't know, you don't know and don't trust, right? And so what would you advise parents who say, सुनो मैं तुम्हारा दोस्त हूँ, और फिर जब सवाल पूछे जाते हैं फिर दोस्ती वैसे सब खत्म हो जाती है. So as parents, how do we, I don't know, do that for ourselves? Where do we begin as parents when a young girl comes up to you and says, what does F mean? Yeah.
So, that's the thing, right? It's like, I've heard this so many times, is that, well, you're a parent, you're not a friend, right? But, why do you have to be categorized as one or the other? And by opening communication, it doesn't mean you're moving out of parenting. It's not as though you turned around and said, beti, say that all the time, right? Like, no, that's not, you had a conversation about something that was asked of you, an honest conversation, right? And then that's also where you get to parent. So you get to then stick in, it's not a great word to use at your age, it's something that is maybe an adult word. That's the parenting, right? So you haven't shut down the communication, but you've also put across your values. And I think even with that, we need to be a little bit careful, because a lot of what I hear is very strong parental values being pushed onto kids, right? The expectation is that that child is going to take that value and go with it. And if those values don't line up, it causes a lot of problems in the relationship and a lot of guilt as well. So the other thing that I would say as parents is we need to learn to accept that our kids are not a reflection of us. They're independent individuals and they may hold different value sets, right? I can't force my child to be something that they're not. All I can do is hope that I'm helping them pave their way. And I know that becomes very complicated because, there are these cases where kids, for example, let's say, with gender diversity now and sexual diversity and relationships, kids wanting to have relationships or communicate with, same sex, opposite sex, all of these things that are happening. And parents want to kind of say, no, that's not okay. That's not our value system, And so now what we're going to do is either one of two things, either do like the hard line punishment or just shut down the communication about it altogether. And what does that result in? That often results in either irresponsible or dangerous behavior from the kids or, cases of severe mental distress. You talked about suicide before. Where is that coming from? It's coming from kids who feel so isolated with the world that they don't know what else to do. And just, imagine that feeling of not having anybody that loves you enough to kind of step in and say that it's okay about who you are or what you want to do or what your confusions are. I'm there for you. So that I think is something that parents really need to work on.
The life skills based education curriculum, is it available online or is it how do we access that?
So we don't have it online, although we are starting to broaden our technology base online so that you can get some of that information. We have a website and some interactive platforms, one called Kadam Uthao. And we're hoping to broaden some of those conversations online as well and give access to some of those resources. But the life skills-based education curriculum actually is right now in all of our partner schools.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because we train teachers first. And again, specifically because when kids go through that curriculum, a lot comes out of it.
Yeah.
And so then we need the people, the relevant resources in school to be able to then do that question answer. And then with the life skills, we often do para-counseling courses as well, so that there's a reference, a referral point in school if issues do come up. Because once you tap into that, a lot starts to come out. And then we also train administrators, we work with parents, so that you then start to develop the entire ecosystem for the child.
So if anyone wants to be a partner school, how do they get in touch?
So they can get in touch with us. We do more extensive trainings. We've done shorter trainings as well. Some schools we go in and do the trainings ourselves. And we go in and talk to the kids, or there's something very specific the school identifies, we need you to come in and we need you to talk about, bullying, or we need you to talk about, puberty with girls and boys, or whatever it is. So we go and do those sessions. We talk to the school and tailor it. But ideally, it's not a one-time thing. And it's not a one age thing. So what a class 5 child needs is different from what a class 9 child needs.
Yeah.
So you got to keep it ongoing.
I just want to ask you, when do we talk to our kids about sex? And when do we have sex ed at home? When is a good age?
Again, from the start. So what is sex ed again, right? That's the question. So most people are going to boil it down to, well, when do you tell the child what, sexual behavior is? Let me tell you, most parents don't actually do that. And by the time they think about it, the child already knows, because they've already got that information. So, but for me, that's not sex ed. Sex ed is the whole, gambit of topics. And those start again from age 3, 4, right? So sex ed for me starts with knowing your body, owning your body, body protection, right? So you're bathing your 3-4-year-old child, and you're saying, this is such a gift. You look at what your legs do. They run for you. Look at what your arms do. They do all these things for you. Look at your hands, just admiration of the body. And, by the way, nobody's allowed to touch you in a way you don't like, so, and if they do, come and tell me. So that's like step 1 sex ed, right? And then you build from there. And at some point, the 5-6-year-old is going to come up and say, where do babies come from? Because every 5 and 6-year-old does, right? They're not asking you about sexual behavior. They're asking you physically, where do babies come from? At that point, you can choose to say, there was a stork, or there was a plane, or there was a delivery, or whatever. I don't know, all the crazy stories, right?
We come on the moment.
Yeah.
Think.
Or you can talk about the sort of this gift of life, and that the baby grew and was nourished in the body, and and so it's just, I think it's our own discomfort.
Yeah,
kids don't care. They're not gonna actually, they're not fazed by these things. It's just our own discomfort, and so we kind of bring in all of these stories, but that is sex ed. And then you go from there, right? You talk to kids before they go through puberty. You don't let a girl start to menstruate in school without knowing what is going on, and be scared out of her mind and embarrassed out of her mind. You don't let that happen. You talk to her. You tell her this is going to happen to your body. You tell a boy that, you're going to start seeing these changes, and this is what you do, and this is how you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
That's sex ed, right? And then onwards from there. So it's lifelong.
Yeah.
I mean, you need
Completely.
sex ed even when you're, by the way, when you're,
in your
when you're,
age.
and you need sex ed when you're older. You need sex. We need to talk about menopause. We need to talk about these things, like we need to talk about fertility and infertility. It's lifelong.
I'm so glad we had this discussion. Before we let you go, we're going to play a little game. It's called 91 Seconds. It's a little rapid fire.
Okay.
Ready? So, okay, and then we're heading out. All right, so with 91 Seconds with Executive Director Aahung, Sheena Hadi. Ready? I needed my stopwatch. Hold on. Let me get my stopwatch out. Okay, here it is.
It's that precise, huh?
Well, kind of. Ready? Okay. What was the last song you were humming?
Oh gosh, A Brimful of Asha.
Oh, favorite song to sing when you're by yourself?
Oh, that is absolutely impossible to answer. It depends on the mood. It depends on the day. I don't know.
What would you be if you weren't doing what you're doing now?
What would I be doing?
Yeah.
I would be writing a chapter that is overdue for the Springer Journal.
Oh, you right?
Well, no, for work. For work,
oh,
yeah.
Okay. No, but if you weren't even doing this, like in this line of work, whatever however you want to define that line of work.
What would I be doing?
Yeah.
Traveling.
Travel blogger. When was the last time you cried? It was a while.
A while, yeah. Yeah, that's nice. A while, yeah.
Unusual hobby.
Unusual hobby. I don't think I have any unusual hobbies. I do I read.
That's unusual.
Is that unusual? Okay, so I still read, and I don't use a Kindle.
Oh, no, you're an alien. The thing that irritates you the most?
Rudeness.
Wait, what else do you have here? Your most prized possession?
My family.
And there's one here. The last person you WhatsApped?
Our communications manager right before this to tell her I'm here and on time.
And finally, the best dish you can cook up.
That I can cook up. Oh, any dessert.
Oh, you're a
all
dessert person.
Oh, yeah. Baking, desserts.
Like from start to finish? Like
from start to
none
finish.
Of the dabbawala and put it in the microwave?
None of the dabbawala, and for me it's therapy. So desserts, baking, yeah.
You should have your Instagram page. Sheena's Desserts. Sheena Hadi, Executive Director. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Been an absolute pleasure. This is The Encounter with Khalid, Malik. We'll see you Monday morning. A reminder that Monday means a game of Quote Me. And don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And we'll see you Monday morning. May your news be good news.